If this is so wonderful, how come I feel like I swallowed that ball sitting right there? I've never won anything in my life before, ever. Except
Susan Dey was regarded as one of American television's purest and most innocent idols in the 1970s. A teenage girl unexpectedly became well-known and a pop culture phenomenon shortly after turning 18. Her pure beauty, natural talent, and smile touched millions of people. Despite portraying the perfect Laurie Partridge on television, she had a lot of problems in her private life. Her upbringing was ruined when her mother died while she was only 8 years old. The strict diet she adopted as a result of the oppressive weight of fame nearly caused her body to collapse. Furthermore, rather than being romantic, a secret romance with a co-star resulted in betrayal that was exposed in tabloid pages. In the end, she departed Hollywood, turned down requests for reunions, and severed all ties to a past that had once caused her great pain. What happened to the celebrity who was once praised as a young treasure in America? Why would a legend at the height of her glory choose to remain silent? What was hidden behind the grin that Susan Dey had put so much effort into maintaining? This is the untold story of how brilliant fame collided with the quietest sorrows of a life behind the scenes. Susan Dey was born in Illinois on December 10, 1952, into a middle-class household. Her father edited newspapers and her mother worked as a nurse. Her upbringing seemed guaranteed to end happily, just like that of countless other kids. But life did not allow that peace to endure. When Susan was 8 years old, her mother passed away suddenly. She carried the quiet wound from that shock with her for the remainder of her life. It was both the beginning of her anguish and the origin of an unfillable gap. Young Susan did not scream or rebel. Instead, she learned how to be silent, withdraw, and grow up before her time. After that tragic demise, Susan's father moved the children to New York and remarried Gail, a wise and perceptive woman. Gail was more than just a stepmother. By seeing Susan's special beauty and innate purity, she unintentionally became the one who made her destiny possible. She forwarded photos she had shot of Susan to modeling agencies. Susan didn't think much of herself at the time, but Gail continued to drive her toward the spotlight, which would ultimately catapult her to the pinnacle of her fame, while also dragging her into deep depths from which she would struggle to escape. Susan landed her first modeling jobs when she was 15. Her gentle beauty, soulful eyes, and naive yet alluring manner set her apart from other teenage models. For the first time, Susan experienced recognition, something she had previously believed she didn't deserve. She was unaware yet that her quick ascent to fame would eventually come at a heavy price. Susan had never been emotionally prepared for the rapidly growing profession that began with the photos and magazine covers. In 1970, when Susan Dey was only 18, one of her modeling pictures caught the attention of an ABC producer, and after that her fate was entirely altered. Despite having no prior film or television experience and no professional acting training, she was cast as Laurie Partridge in the musical sitcom The Partridge Family after just a few tryouts. Her natural beauty, expressive eyes, and pure musical ability convinced the filmmakers that they had found the perfect young girl that Americans had long yearned to see. They were also right. Laurie Partridge became one of the most beloved television characters in the early 1970s. The Partridge Family became a cultural sensation from its debut season. Susan's image could be found all across America, from posters and magazines to school notebooks and bedroom walls, because of her unequaled fan fervor, hit records, and increasing rating. Every week, the studio received a large number of mails from admirers. Susan, on the other hand, rose to prominence as the nation's teen darling so quickly that her impressionable heart could not cope. With the help of her stepmother, Susan had strayed into modeling. However, Susan had to sacrifice her own health to uphold that vision of the perfect woman. The producers constantly put pressure on her to maintain her slim figure in order to satisfy the beauty standards of television at the time. Because of her fixation with how the world perceived her and her dread of criticism, she began going on an extreme diet. Sometimes she survived solely on carrots and celery. She was barely 41 kilograms. Her arms became so thin that it seemed like they would break at the slightest touch. But every time the cameras started rolling, she kept smiling as though everything was perfect. Despite having no formal musical experience, Susan dedicated all of her time to mastering acting, harmonizing, and playing the piano while filming. While working, she learned new things and struggled to breathe because of her sudden fame. The Partridge family produced several charting songs, best-selling albums, and multiple television award nominations throughout the course of its 4 seasons. Susan's fissures grew more severe as the spotlight intensified. At the height of her career, she was faced with a terrible emptiness. Who could truly understand the loneliness of a girl who had to grow up too fast? In 1972, as the show's fame spread throughout America, Susan made her big screen debut in Skyjacked, co-starring with Hollywood legend Charlton Heston. Just 2 years ago, she had never ever been in front of a camera. Now she was appearing on the big screen. It was both exhilarating and frightening. Even though Susan didn't play the lead, the role was enough to show audiences and filmmakers that she had more than simply a smile and young beauty. She had the potential to be a successful actor. She became a role model for young girls in America after her book Secrets on Boys' Beauty and Popularity was published that same year. The book's simple beauty advice helped it become a bestseller. People wanted to witness more than just her singing and acting. They wanted to be like her. But as her fame grew, the darkness beneath it deepened. A young celebrity who had hardly had time to catch her breath in the hot spotlight was left behind when the Partridge family broke up in 1974 while it was still at its height of fame, devastating millions of admirers. What remained after the lights went off and the glittering sets disappeared was a slimmer, quieter Susan, who was constantly troubled by the idea that she would always be trapped in the role of Laurie Partridge, a girl who was very different from Susan in real life. Her rise to fame had come so naturally to her, but escaping it was the true challenge. A battle that nearly caused her to lose herself. Because just as everyone thought the fairy tale was over, Susan was about to enter the most challenging stage of her life. She was desperate to prove to the world that she was more than just the eldest sister of the Partridge family. After the Partridge family ended, Susan escaped from the shadow of the very persona that had made her famous and made it to the stage that all former teenage stars feared. She later starred in Hawaii Five-0, returned to the big screen, and appeared in Little Women in 1978. Hollywood could not forget Laurie Partridge, despite her determination to prove that she was more than just a charming young woman. Every time Susan, the eldest sister of the Partridge family, appeared in front of the camera, people continued to notice her. The feeling of being stereotyped became into a recurrent obsession, and she felt tremendous pressure to prove her uniqueness with every new venture. Susan took a risk in 1977 when she starred in the romantic sitcom Loves Me, Loves Me Not, hoping it would be a bold turning point in her career. But destiny was harsh. Ratings dropped quickly. The show was canceled after just 6 episodes. That failure was a sobering reminder that escaping her history would be far more difficult and painful than she had ever imagined. That same year, however, she had a powerful performance as a young mother going through a mental breakdown in Mary Jane Harper Cried Last Night. Positive reviews from critics showed that despite her innocent, caring appearance, she was an actor who could delve into the deepest corners of people's hearts. Susan's self-confidence was restored by a little flame aim, but it was not the brilliant limelight she had known during her time as a star on the Partridge family. She might make a comeback in Hollywood thanks to her own talent, rather than relying solely on her prior status as a youthful idol. But it wasn't until the 1980s that Susan totally changed her role in the entertainment business. Nobody believed she could achieve such a feat. Susan's life would change in 1986 when she was cast as Grace Van Owen in the hit television series L.A. The Law. This was not merely a new role. She was able to enter the ranks of reputable and serious performers in Hollywood thanks to it. L.A. Law put together a talented creative team to portray the fiercely competitive Los Angeles legal landscape using well-known cases that had previously shocked American culture. In this regard, Grace Van Owen, who began as a clever prosecutor before developing into a strong, independent, and compassionate judge, quickly rose to prominence as one of the show's primary characters. The role required accuracy in every legal detail in addition to emotional depth to portray the moral quandaries faced by a woman who was the leader of her household. Susan was really mature in her performance. Even as she maintained a cold, unflinching gaze in the face of criminality, viewers were still able to see the vulnerabilities underlying her intimidating exterior. The L.A. Law quickly became well known, attracting tens of millions of viewers each week and helping NBC maintain primetime domination. Susan won the 1988 Golden Globe for Best Actress and was nominated for 3 consecutive Emmys. It was an incredible transformation for a celebrity who had previously felt uncertain after the Partridge family. Susan was a zealous guardian of her character's richness in addition to her performance. She fiercely objected and insisted on a stipulation in the contract ensuring that Grace would remain a woman with a job and a voice of her own, rather than turning into a love interest who was merely decorative when the writer's goal was to construct a cheesy romantic plot to attract viewers. Because of this same attitude, Grace Van Owen came to symbolize the modern woman, intelligent, independent, and unwilling to sacrifice her values for a cheap on-screen romance, in addition to L&A.'s huge success. Law. Susan continued to challenge herself by playing a drug-addicted pregnant mother in emotionally intense TV series, like Lies and Lullabies. This further proved that she was more than just a star who had been fortunate, rather she was a true artist with profound emotional depth. But every spotlight has a price. At the height of her career, her private life was about to enter a chapter filled with excruciating scars that not even stardom could protect her from. After dominating Hollywood with her clever, commanding portrayal of Grace Van Owen, Susan tackled a whole different battlefield, the live stage of Saturday Night Live. A serious actress was thrust into the comedy business where a musical blunder could become a national joke, but she exuded such confidence. Her natural sense of humor, spontaneous performances, and effortless charisma astounded the audience. It was her last statement. Susan Dey, an actress, wasn't only lucky to get one gig, she could do whatever she wanted. But just as she was at the height of her fame, an unexpected downturn happened without notice. After only a few episodes of the sitcom Love and War, which was meant to help her maintain her status as a celebrity, she was replaced due to a lack of chemistry with the male lead. It was a harsh decision, like a blow to a Golden Globe winner's pride. But Susan didn't become angry, didn't beg, and didn't try to maintain the limelight. She decided to go with dignity. If a project no longer valued her skills, she would give it up. Susan chose the more difficult path and returned to emotionally demanding parts rather than sitcoms. In the 1993 movie Lies and Lullabies, which she co-produced and featured in, a pregnant cocaine addict is denied the opportunity to become a mother and fights heroically to reclaim the last vestige of hope in her life. The film forced her to experiment with a degree of psychological depravity in her music that her audience had never seen before. The production received high marks from critics despite the lack of tabloid hype. Susan had grown as an actress and an artist. After Lies and Lullabies, she continued to search for parts that valued sincerity over easy attention. In television series like Bed of Lies, Deadly Love, and Blue River, she starred in dark tales of murder, betrayal, and lives on the brink of collapse. These productions all promoted a single concept, even though none of them were very popular. Susan had given up on being well known. She wanted authenticity for each character. And because of that seriousness, viewers saw that the innocent smile that had belonged to America's sweetheart now belonged to an actress with depth and intrigue. In 2002, Susan returned as Grace Van Owen in the film L.A. the Law. It was both a heartfelt tribute to her biggest legacy and a gentle reminder that she would only return when she felt it was worthy, rather than trying to cling to a limelight that had already faded. It was entirely her choice to make fewer and fewer appearances. When she portrayed Dr. Susan Breen in Third Watch in 2004, her more than 30 years in Hollywood came to an end. There was neither a news conference announcing her retirement nor a heartfelt farewell.